The morning fog clung to Boston Harbor like a shroud as Evelyn Whitmore stood at the pier, her single trunk beside her and a leather satchel clutched in her gloved hands. The salty air mixed with coal smoke from the waiting train, making her eyes water, though perhaps that was from other causes. Behind her, the city that had been her entire world faded into memory, along with the shame of her father's debts and the whispers that followed her through the streets after his funeral. "All aboard for the westbound!" The conductor's call pierced through her reverie. Evelyn lifted her chin, smoothing the worn fabric of her best traveling dress, a deep blue wool that had seen better days but still maintained some dignity. Inside her satchel lay the letters that promised a new life, correspondence from Mr. Jonathan Hartley of Dust Creek, New Mexico Territory, a gentleman rancher. He'd written, seeking a refined woman of good breeding to share his prosperous life. His letters spoke of a white-painted house with real glass windows, Sunday socials, and a community hungry for Eastern sophistication. The train journey stretched endlessly across the changing landscape, through Pennsylvania's rolling hills, past Chicago's sprawling stockyards, across the endless prairie where buffalo bones littered the tracks like scattered dice. Other passengers came and went, salesmen with their sample cases, settlers with hollow eyes and calloused hands, soldiers heading to frontier posts. Evelyn kept to herself, reading and rereading Mr. Hartley's letters until the paper grew soft from handling. A lady traveling alone. An older woman across the aisle studied her with sharp eyes. "Meeting your husband?" "My intended," Evelyn replied, forcing brightness into her voice. "We're to be married upon my arrival." The woman's expression softened slightly. "Mail-order bride. Then, my niece did the same. Married a shopkeeper in Colorado. She writes that she's happy enough." The pause before "enough" hung in the air like dust motes. 5 days later. The train wheezed to a stop at a sun-baked platform that seemed to exist solely because someone had hammered a sign into the ground declaring it so. Dust Creek. Evelyn peered through the grimy window at a collection of weathered buildings that barely qualified as a town. No white-painted house was visible, no gathering of welcoming citizens. Just heat shimmers rising from packed earth and a few men lounging in the shade of what appeared to be a saloon. She descended onto the platform, her eastern boots clicking on the wooden boards. The heat struck her like an open oven door. Within moments, perspiration gathered beneath her corset, and dust began settling on every surface of her clothing. "Miss Whitmore?" She turned to find a man approaching, but not the man from the photograph Mr. Hartley had sent. This person was shorter, rounder, with the nervous eyes that wouldn't quite meet hers. He wore a badge that read Deputy, and carried himself with the authority of someone perpetually unsure of that authority. "Yes, I'm Miss Whitmore. I'm expecting Mr. Hartley." "About that." The deputy shifted his weight, dust puffing around his boots. "There's been a change in arrangements." Ice formed in Evelyn's stomach despite the heat. "What do you mean?" "Mr. Hartley. Well, he took sick with the fever last month. Died quick. Lord rest him." The platform seemed to tilt. Evelyn gripped her satchel tighter. Mr. Hartley's letters crinkling inside. "But we had an agreement. I've come all this way." "Yes, ma'am, and that's the thing." The deputy pulled out a crumpled paper. Before he passed, "Mr. Hartley." He signed over his obligation. "The marriage contract. You see, it's all legal-like." "Signed over?" Evelyn's voice rose. "I'm not a piece of property to be transferred. Now. Miss, you signed papers too, didn't you? Accepting the transport money, agreeing to marry a man in Dust Creek?" His tone turned wheedling. "The territorial judge. He says it's binding. You can't just take a man's money for passage and then refuse to honor the agreement." "But Mr. Hartley is dead." "The agreement stands, just with a different party." The deputy looked over her shoulder and nodded. "Here he comes now." Evelyn turned, expecting perhaps an elderly rancher or portly merchant. Instead, she saw emptiness, just the desert stretching beyond the town's borders. Then movement caught her eye. A rider approached from the wasteland, appearing like a mirage through the heat shimmer. As he drew closer, Evelyn's heart sank further with each detail that became clear. The man sat his horse like he'd been born to it, but everything else about him screamed danger. Dusty leather clothes that had seen hard use, a gun belt worn with casual familiarity, dark hair that hung past his collar, unkempt and wild. And as he dismounted with fluid grace, she saw his face. A scar ran from his left temple down across his cheek, pulling at the corner of his mouth. Not a clean dueling scar like young men sometimes sported in Boston, but something violent and poorly healed. His skin carried the deep tan of someone who lived under the desert sun, and his features held angles that spoke of mixed blood. When he looked at her, his eyes were the color of winter bark, dark, hard, and utterly without warmth. "Miss Whitmore." His voice was low, rougher than burlap. He didn't remove his hat or offer any courtesy a gentleman would. "I'm Cade Redhawk. We'll be leaving now." "I certainly will not," Evelyn began, but the deputy interrupted. "Now, Mr. Redhawk here paid off Hartley's debts to take on the obligation. It's all legal. The judge stamped it himself." He produced another paper, keeping it just out of her reach. "Unless you got the money to pay back the transport and expenses?" Evelyn knew she had exactly $17 to her name. Not enough for a hotel room. Certainly not enough for passage back east. This is barbaric. You can't simply transfer a marriage agreement like a deed of sale. Territorial law says different, the deputy mumbled, already backing away. "You work it out between yourselves. Mr. Redhawk's a man of his word. He'll see you're treated proper." Cade Redhawk hadn't moved during the exchange, standing with the patience of a man accustomed to waiting. When Evelyn turned back to face him, his expression hadn't changed. Flat, unreadable, giving away nothing. "I have supplies to collect," he said. "You can wait with your trunk or follow. Makes no difference to me." He walked away without waiting for an answer, heading toward a general store. Evelyn stood abandoned on the platform, her trunk at her feet, watching her last hope of civilization stride away in worn boots and trail dust. Around her, the few visible townspeople avoided her gaze, suddenly finding urgent business elsewhere. The sun beat down mercilessly. She had no money for return passage, no connections in this desolate place, no options except the scarred stranger who'd apparently purchased her like livestock. When Cade emerged from the store with laden saddlebags, he found her still standing where he'd left her, spine straight despite the wilting heat. He loaded his horse with economical movements, then looked at her trunk with the first expression she'd seen, mild disdain. "That won't travel where we're going." "Where exactly are we going?" Evelyn demanded. "My place. 2 days' ride into the mountains." 2 days? Her voice cracked. "Mr. Hartley's letters mentioned a ranch just outside town." "I'm not Hartley." He pulled out a canvas sack and tossed it at her feet. "Pack what you need. Leave the rest. I will not abandon my belongings on the word of a complete stranger who thinks he can simply claim me like undelivered mail." For the first time, something flickered in those dark eyes. Maybe amusement, maybe irritation. "Suit yourself, but that trunk stays here." He swung into his saddle and started riding toward the desert. Evelyn stood frozen for a moment, then grabbed the canvas sack and frantically began transferring essentials from her trunk. A few dresses, her mother's Bible, the silver brush that was her last valuable possession. Her hands shook as she worked, aware of eyes watching from windows and doorways. When Cade was nearly out of sight, panic overtook pride. Evelyn shouldered the now heavy sack and struggled after him, her eastern boots slipping on the dusty road. He didn't slow or look back, though he must have heard her labored progress. At the edge of town, where civilization ended and wilderness began, a second horse waited, a sturdy mare, saddled and patient. Cade had dismounted and stood beside it, finally watching her approach. "You knew I'd follow," she accused, breathless and furious. "You're here, aren't you?" He didn't help her with the sack, just indicated the mare. "Can you ride?" "Of course I can ride. I had proper lessons in— This isn't a park path in Boston." He adjusting the mare's stirrups with quick efficiency. "Stay on. Keep up. Don't complain. We've got ground to cover before dark." Evelyn wanted to refuse, to demand answers, to rail against the injustice of it all. But the sun was already beginning its descent, and the shadows creeping across the desert floor promised cold and danger. She'd heard the stories on the train— wolves, bandits, things that hunted in the darkness. With as much dignity as she could muster, she allowed him to help her mount, his hands impersonal and brief at her waist. The mare shifted beneath her, and she realized with sinking certainty that this animal was nothing like the docile creatures in Boston's riding academies. Cade swung onto his own horse and started forward without a word. Evelyn clutched the saddle horn, her sack tied awkwardly behind her, and followed the scarred stranger into the wild emptiness that would swallow her whole. Behind them, Dust Creek shrank to a smudge on the horizon, then vanished entirely. Ahead lay only mountain shadows and the unknown, and a man who wore silence like armor against the world. The cabin emerged from the forest like something grown rather than built, its log walls weathered to the same gray as the surrounding pines. After 2 days of brutal riding through mountain passes that made Evelyn's bones ache, even this crude shelter looked like salvation. Her throat was parched, her skin burned despite the bonnet she'd worn, and blisters had formed under the thin leather of her inappropriate boots. Cade dismounted in one fluid motion, already working to unsaddle his horse. He hadn't spoken more than 10 words during their entire journey, communicating mainly through gestures and the occasional grunt when she'd asked desperate questions about water or rest. Evelyn slid from the mare less gracefully, her legs trembling as they touched ground. The clearing around the cabin was small, hemmed by towering pines and rocky outcroppings. No neighbors visible, no smoke from other chimneys, just wilderness pressing in from all sides, and the sound of wind through branches like whispered warnings. "This is where you live?" The words came out more accusatory than she'd intended. Cade paused in his work, looking at her with that flat expression she was beginning to hate. "This is where we live." The correction hit like cold water. She had been thinking of this as temporary, some misunderstanding to be sorted out. But standing here in this remote clearing, she realized the full weight of her situation. No law would reach here, no help would come if she called. The cabin's interior was Spartan but clean. One main room with a stone fireplace, a rough-hewn table, 2 chairs that didn't match. A ladder led to what must be a loft. Through an open doorway, she glimpsed a lean-to addition that served as storage. Everything spoke of solitary living. 1 plate, 1 cup, one man's existence carved out of wilderness. "Pumps out back for water," Cade said, depositing her canvas sack by the door. "Privy's beyond that. Don't wander past the tree line after dark." Why? Despite her exhaustion, curiosity pricked at her. "Because I said so." He left her standing there, returning outside to tend the horses. Evelyn surveyed her new prison, fighting down the urge to cry. She'd cried enough on the trail, silent tears that she'd hoped he hadn't noticed. Now she needed to think, to plan, to find some way out of this nightmare. She unpacked slowly, hanging her few dresses on pegs that already held men's clothing. The contrast was stark, her faded silk and cotton beside his leather and rough wool. When she lifted his jacket to make room, something fell from the pocket, a small leather pouch, decorated with beadwork unlike anything sold in Boston shops. The pattern was intricate, beautiful, distinctly Indian in design. "Don't touch that." She spun to find Cade in the doorway, his expression darker than before. He crossed the room in 2 strides and took the pouch from her hands, his fingers careful despite his obvious anger. I was just making room for my things." He tucked the pouch inside his shirt, against his chest. "Your things go there." He pointed to a small trunk in the corner. "Leave mine alone." That evening, she watched him prepare a simple meal of beans and dried meat, moving around the kitchen space with surprising efficiency. When he set a plate before her, she noticed his hands, scarred like his face, but graceful in their movements. He ate in silence, and she followed suit, too tired and overwhelmed for conversation. As darkness fell, the temperature plummeted. Evelyn shivered in her thin dress, moving closer to the fireplace. Cade added more wood without comment, then climbed the ladder to the loft. She heard him moving around up there, then his boots hitting the floor. "Where am I to sleep?" she called up. "Wherever you want. There's blankets in the trunk." She made a pallet near the fire, using her cloak as additional covering. The floor was hard, unforgiving, but exhaustion pulled at her. Just before she dozed off, she heard something, soft words from the loft, not in English. The cadence was different, rhythmic, almost like a prayer. "Apache," she realized with a start. He was speaking Apache. Dawn came too soon, bringing with it the reality of her new life. The pump out back was frozen, requiring her to break the ice with a stick. The privy was horrifying, just a rough board over a hole. When she returned to the cabin, Cade was already gone, though coffee simmered on the stove. Days fell into a pattern. He left at sunrise, returning at dusk, sometimes with game, rabbits, deer, sometimes with nothing but trail dust and silence. She learned to tend the fire, to cook simple meals from their meager supplies, to haul water and keep the cabin somewhat clean. But questions gnawed at her. Who was this man who lived like a hermit yet spoke 2 languages? Why did he keep Apache items yet live apart from any tribe? And most pressingly, what did he want from her? One afternoon, while exploring the storage lean-to for supplies, she found answers she hadn't expected. Tucked behind sacks of grain was a small wooden box. Inside were papers, military discharge documents, a wanted poster so old the edges crumbled, and a photograph. The image showed a younger Cade without the scar, standing beside a native woman and a young girl. Family, clearly, but their eyes held sadness even in that frozen moment. "I told you not to touch my things." She hadn't heard him return. He stood in the doorway, rifle in hand, looking more dangerous than she'd yet seen him. "I was looking for salt," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I'm trying to make this bearable, trying to contribute, by going through my private belongings, by understanding why I'm here." The words exploded out of her. "You bought me like property, dragged me to this wilderness, yet you barely speak to me. What do you want from me?" He set the rifle aside carefully, then took the box from her hands. "I want nothing from you." "Then why?" "Hartley owed me money, a lot of money. The judge said taking on his obligation squared the debt." He returned the box to its hiding place. "You needed somewhere to go. I needed the debt settled. That's all." "That's all?" Incredulity sharpened her voice. "You took on a wife you don't want to settle a debt." Something flickered in his eyes. That might have been pain. "I didn't say I'd be your husband, just that you'd have a roof, food, protection. That's what the paper required." Understanding dawned slowly. You're not expecting—" "I sleep in the loft. You sleep by the fire. You cook and keep house. I hunt and provide. Come spring, if you want to leave, I'll take you back to town. Until then, we survive winter, nothing more." Relief and disappointment warred in her chest, an odd reaction that she didn't care to examine. "Why didn't you just say this from the beginning? Would it have changed anything? You still had nowhere else to go." That night, she heard him on the roof, patching holes before the winter storms came. She climbed the ladder part way, finding him working by moonlight. "I could help," she offered. He looked down at her, surprise clear even in the darkness. "You know how to patch a roof?" "No, but I can learn." For the first time since she'd met him, his mouth curved in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Hand me that tar bucket." They worked in companionable silence, and when clouds covered the moon, he lit a lantern. In its glow, the scar on his face seemed less harsh, and she found herself wondering about the man beneath the harsh exterior. When he spoke soft instructions, "Hold it steady now, and press down hard until it seals," his voice carried a gentleness she hadn't heard before. Later, washing tar from their hands at the pump, she asked. "The woman in the photograph. Your wife?" His hand stilled. "My mother. And the girl." "Sister." The word came out clipped. Final. "Where are they now?" He dried his hand slowly, not meeting her eyes. "Dead. Both of them. Long time ago." The weight of that simple statement hung between them. Evelyn wanted to say something, offer comfort, ask more questions, but his posture warned against both. He headed inside, and she followed. The space between them filled with unspoken sorrows. That night, as she lay by the fire, she didn't hear Apache words from the loft. Instead, she heard something else. The quiet, controlled breathing of a man fighting off nightmares. And for the first time since arriving, she felt something other than fear or anger toward Cade Redhawk. She felt the stirring of compassion for a man who lived alone, not by choice, but because loss had driven him to these mountains where ghosts couldn't follow, or so he'd hoped. The storm arrived without warning, transforming the world outside into a howling white void. Evelyn woke to find snow already piled against the windows, the wind screaming through gaps in the walls like a living thing. The fire had died to embers, and cold pressed in from every direction. "Cade," she called up to the loft, teeth chattering. His boots hit the floor immediately. He descended the ladder, fully dressed as if he hadn't been sleeping. One look at the windows and his jaw tightened. "Early blizzard," he said, moving to the fireplace. "Could last days." "Days!" The word came out as a squeak. He built the fire back up with practiced efficiency, then began checking their supplies. "We've got food, wood stacked under cover. Long as the roof holds, we'll manage." But as the hours passed, the storm's fury only intensified. Snow found every crack, forming small drifts in corners. The wind made the whole cabin groan and shudder. Evelyn huddled near the fire, wrapped in every blanket she could find, while Cade reinforced the door and windows with whatever he could find. By the second day, her nerves were frayed raw. The constant howling, the walls closing in, the forced proximity to a man who barely spoke. It was too much. When he came down from checking the loft windows, she was pacing like a caged animal. "I can't stand this," she burst out. "The noise, the cold, being trapped." "You think I like it?" His voice carried an edge she hadn't heard before. "How would I know what you like? You don't talk. I don't know anything about you except that you live alone in these god-forsaken mountains, like some kind of what?" He stepped closer, dark eyes dangerous. "Say it, like someone hiding from the world." The silence that followed was heavier than the storm. Cade turned away, but she saw his hands clench. "Maybe I am," he said finally. "Maybe that's the only way." The only way to what? He spun back to face her. "To not end up dead or in prison for being born half Apache in a world that wants us gone. To not watch anyone else I care about pay for my existence. That enough truth for you?" The raw pain in his voice stopped her cold. "Cade, you want to know about this?" He touched the scar on his face. "Soldiers gave me this when I was 16. Said they were teaching me my place. Want to know about my mother? Shot by those same soldiers for the crime of loving a white man. My sister took her own life after..." He stopped, breathing hard. "After what they did to her." Evelyn sank onto a chair, overwhelmed. "I'm sorry, I didn't..." "No, you didn't." He grabbed his coat. "I need to check the horses." "In this storm? You can't..." But he was already forcing the door open against the wind. Snow swirled in, and then he was gone, swallowed by white. Hours passed. The fire burned low. Evelyn fed it, checked the windows, paced. Where was he? Even someone who knew these mountains couldn't navigate in this blizzard. When the door finally crashed open, she nearly sobbed with relief. Cade stumbled in, covered in snow, ice crystals in his hair and beard. His lips were blue, his movements clumsy. Hypothermia. She realized with a jolt of fear. "Get those wet clothes off," she ordered, surprising them both with her commanding tone. "I'm fine." You're not fine. You're freezing. Off, now. She grabbed blankets, stoked the fire higher. When she turned back, he'd managed his coat and boots, but was struggling with his shirt, fingers too numb to work the buttons. Without thinking, she stepped close and began unbuttoning it herself. I can... Be quiet. His skin was ice cold beneath the wet fabric. She tried not to notice the scars that marked his chest and arms. Some old, some newer. Evidence of a hard life written in flesh. She wrapped him in blankets, forced him to sit by the fire. Why? She asked softly. Why go out in that? He looked up at her, and for once his guard was down. Couldn't stand seeing disappointment in your eyes. Same way she used to look at me. Who? My sister. Before, near the end. Like I'd failed her by not being white enough to protect her. Evelyn knelt beside his chair. You didn't fail anyone. Didn't I? His voice was hollow. Couldn't save them. Couldn't even avenge them without becoming the savage they said I was. She took his hands, chafing warmth back into them. Is that why you live up here alone? Safer. For everyone. For everyone, or for you. He looked at her then. Really looked at her. What difference does it make? Because loneliness isn't safety. It's just loneliness. Something shifted in his expression. And what would you know about loneliness? Boston lady with your proper life. You think wearing silk meant I wasn't alone? My father was a drunk who gambled away everything, including my dowry. My mother died of shame, literally wasted away from it. I spent 2 years nursing him, watching him destroy himself, becoming a pariah because of his debts. When he died, not one person in Boston would help me. Not one. Her voice broke. So yes, I know about loneliness. They sat in silence, the storm raging outside while something else entirely raged between them. Finally, Cade spoke. I never meant for you to end up here. Hartley's debt. It was supposed to be simple. Take the obligation, provide what was required, nothing more. And now, he studied their joined hands. Now I don't know. That night, she made him soup from their stores, and they ate together by the fire. He told her about learning to hunt from his mother's people, about the years trying to live in white towns before retreating to these mountains. She told him about Boston society, about the slow slide from respectability to desperation. When the wind picked up again, shaking the cabin, she flinched. He noticed. It'll hold, he assured her. Built it myself. It's stronger than it looks. Like its owner. That almost smile appeared again. Maybe. The third day brought a brief lull. They ventured out to check the animals, working together to break ice on the water trough and distribute feed. The world was transformed, buried under feet of pristine snow. Beautiful and terrible at once. That evening, Cade produced a small jug from somewhere. Corn whiskey. Made it myself. Helps with the cold. They passed it between them. The liquor burning but warming. Evelyn felt her carefully maintained walls beginning to crumble. I was engaged once, she found herself saying, before Father's debts became known. Thomas Ashford. He wrote me a very proper letter explaining why he couldn't ally himself with scandal. His loss. Was it? Maybe he was right. Maybe I'm exactly where I deserve to be. No. Cade's voice was firm. You deserve better than this. Better than me. The whiskey made her bold. What if I don't want better? He stared at her. You don't know what you're saying, don't I? She stood, swaying slightly, and moved to where he sat. His eyes tracked her movement, wary like a wild animal. When she reached out to touch his scarred cheek, he caught her wrist. Evelyn, you're drunk. Not that drunk. Drunk enough. Go to bed. Stung by the rejection, she pulled away. Of course, heaven forbid the savage touch the white woman. Right? His face went hard. That's not, isn't it? Tears pricked her eyes. You'll share your roof but nothing else. Keep me at arm's length because you think you're protecting me. From what? From you? I've seen who you are. Cade Redhawk. You're not the monster you think you are. She stumbled to her pallet by the fire, pulling blankets over her head to hide her tears. Above, she heard him climb to the loft, each step heavy with things unsaid. The storm broke during the night. She woke to stillness, then the sound of movement above. Cade's footsteps, pacing. Then they stopped, and she heard him descend the ladder. He stood over her pallet, silhouetted by dying firelight. "You asked what I want from you," he said quietly. "Truth is, I want everything. Want things I got no right to want. That's why I keep my distance." She sat up, heart pounding. "Cade, let me finish. You think you know who I am, but you don't. Not really. The things I've done, the blood on my hands, justified or not. It's there. I am savage when I need to be. I've killed men who deserved it and some who maybe didn't. That's who shares this roof with you." "I know," she whispered. "Do you? Because come spring, you could go back, find another town, another life. Why would you choose this? Choose me?" "Because," she said, standing to face him, "when I look at you, I don't see a savage. I see a man who built a strong cabin, who tends horses with gentle hands, who speaks prayers in his mother's tongue, who went into a blizzard rather than harsh words with me. Evelyn, I see you, Cade, all of you, and I'm not afraid." He stood there, torn between advance and retreat. The scar pulled at his mouth, but she thought perhaps he wanted to smile. "You should be afraid," he said finally, "but I'm glad you're not." Neither moved to touch the other. But something fundamental had shifted between them. The cabin felt smaller, warmer, charged with possibility. Outside, snow began to fall again, but gently now, like a blessing, or perhaps forgiveness, drifting down through the mountain darkness to cover all their scars in white. The weeks after the storm passed in a strange new rhythm, where before there had been careful distance. Now there were small kindnesses. Cade leaving fresh game already cleaned by the door. Evelyn mending his torn shirt without being asked. They worked together with an ease that surprised them both, preparing for deeper winter. "Hold it steady," Cade instructed as Evelyn helped him repair a broken trap. His hands covered hers, guiding them on the metal. "Feel where it catches? That's where the spring needs tension." She nodded, hyper-aware of his proximity, the warmth of his breath in the cold air. When the trap snapped properly, she smiled up at him, and he actually smiled back, a real one that transformed his scarred face. "You're learning quick," he said, and the approval in his voice warmed her more than any fire. One afternoon, while he was skinning a rabbit, she noticed him favoring his left shoulder. "You're hurt," she said. "It's nothing. Old wound acts up in the cold. Let me see." "Evelyn." "Don't be stubborn." He sighed but pulled off his shirt. An old bullet wound marred his shoulder, the scar tissue tight and puckered. Without thinking, she traced it gently with her fingertips. "Army?" she asked. "Bounty hunter. Few years back." His voice had gone rough. "Thought I was someone else, someone worth more dead than alive." "Were you?" "Maybe. Doesn't matter now." She found oil in his supplies and worked it into the damaged muscle. He sat still under her touch, tension gradually leaving his body. When she finished, he caught her hand. "Why are you kind to me? Why wouldn't I be? Most people see the Apache blood, the scars, and that's all they see. Then most people are fools." He turned to face her fully, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "Evelyn, I need to tell you something. About the silver working." "Silver working?" He rose and retrieved something from a high shelf. Tools she hadn't noticed before. Pieces of silver. Works in progress. "My mother taught me. It's about the only good thing I kept from her world." He showed her a half-finished bracelet, the design intricate despite its small size. "I've been making something. For you." "Cade, just let me finish it first, then decide if you want it." That evening, she watched him work by lamplight, his scarred hands impossibly gentle with the delicate metal. He was wholly absorbed, speaking occasional words in Apache, not prayers, she realized, but descriptions of what he was doing, as if someone else were there learning. "You're teaching her," Evelyn said softly. "Your sister. You're showing her how." His hand stilled. She always wanted to learn. Never got the chance. What was her name? Sarah, my father's choice, but Mother called her Singing Bird in Apache. He returned to his work. She was 12 when she died. So young, too innocent for what this world did to her. They sat in companionable silence until the silver piece was complete, a small pendant on a chain, delicate as frost. He held it up to the light. It's beautiful, Evelyn breathed. My mother wore one like it, said it carried protection. He set it aside carefully. Doesn't have to mean anything, just wanted to make something beautiful. Haven't done that in a long time. Later, as she prepared for bed, she found the pendant left on her blanket. She held it up, admiring how it caught the firelight. When she looked up at the loft, she could see him watching. Thank you, she called softly. Wear it, he said. Please. She clasped it around her neck, the silver cool against her skin. It felt like a promise, though neither spoke of what kind. The next morning brought clear skies and Cade's announcement that they'd ride to the lower meadow to check his winter meat cache. Evelyn was becoming a competent rider under his tutelage, and they made good time through the snow-laden pines. The meadow spread before them like a white canvas, mountains rising majestic in the distance, while Cade checked his buried supplies. Evelyn wandered to where a partially frozen stream gurgled beneath ice. Careful, he called. Ice might be... The crack was sharp as gunshot. Evelyn plunged through into water so cold it stole her breath. The current, stronger than it looked, pulled at her heavy skirts. She scrabbled for purchase on the ice edge, but it kept breaking away. Then Cade was there, throwing himself flat on solid ground, reaching for her. Take my hands, both hands, now! She grasped desperately at him as he hauled her out, her dress weighing her down like anchor chains. He pulled her against him, both of them gasping. Can't take you anywhere, he muttered, but his voice shook. So cold, she managed through chattering teeth. Without hesitation, he began stripping her wet outer clothing. Need to get you warm, fast. She was too cold to feel embarrassed as he wrapped her in his own coat, then lifted her onto his horse. He swung up behind her, enclosing her in his arms as he urged the horse to speed. Back at the cabin, he built the fire to roaring while she huddled in blankets. Her fingers were numb, useless. He knelt before her, taking her hands between his. This might hurt, he warned, then began the painful process of warming them. She bit her lip against the burning sensation as feeling returned. He was utterly focused, rubbing her hands, then her feet, clinical in his determination to prevent frostbite. Only when color returned to her extremities did he sit back on his heels. That was stupid, she said. Yes, you saved me. Yes, Cade, you almost died. His control finally cracked. Do you understand that? Another minute in that water. But I didn't, because of you. He stood abruptly, pacing. This is why it's not safe. I can't. If something happened to you. Nothing happened. I'm here. I'm safe. Are you? He spun to face her. Are you safe? With me? In this place? Today it was ice. Tomorrow it could be worse. I've already lost. He stopped, breathing hard. You haven't lost me. Haven't I? His laugh was bitter. Spring comes. You leave. That was the agreement. Agreements can change. Not this one. You deserve civilization, proper society, a real life. Not this. He gestured around the cabin. Not me. She stood, the blanket falling away. She wore only her chemise and petticoat, but she didn't care. What if I don't want civilization? You don't know what you're saying. I'm getting very tired of you telling me what I don't know. She stepped closer. I know that I've never felt more alive than I do here. I know that when you look at me, I feel seen for the first time in my life. I know that when you touch me, even accidentally, I stop. But he didn't move away. Why? Because it's not proper? Because you think you're protecting me? She was close enough now to see the war in his eyes. I don't need protection. Cade, I need... He kissed her. Not gentle, not careful, but desperate. like a man drowning. His hands tangled in her hair, and she pressed against him, feeling the wild beat of his heart. When they broke apart, both were breathless. "Evelyn," he said her name like a prayer and a curse combined. "I know," she whispered. "I know all the reasons why not. I don't care. You should care. You should run far and fast and never look back." "Too late." She touched the pendant at her throat. "You already marked me as yours." Something broke in his expression then. He cradled her face in his scarred hands with infinite tenderness. "Is that what you want? To be mine?" "Yes. Even knowing what I am, what I've done. Because I know who you are. All of it." He kissed her again. Softer this time, but no less intense. When he pulled back, his eyes held wonder and fear in equal measure. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "How to be what you deserve. Then we'll learn together." That night, she climbed the ladder to the loft for the first time. He waited for her there, uncertain despite everything. She came to him in the darkness, guided by instinct and desire. His hands shook as they found her. "Are you sure?" he asked one last time. Instead of answering, she kissed the scar on his face, then found his mouth with hers. He made a sound like surrender and drew her down beside him. They came together with careful exploration, each touch a question and answer combined. He was gentle despite his strength, reverent in his handling of her. She traced each scar like a map of his survival, claiming them all. When he spoke her name in the darkness, it sounded like salvation. Afterward, they lay entwined, her head on his chest where she could hear his heartbeat slowly steady. His fingers combed through her hair, the gesture unconsciously tender. "No regrets?" he asked. "Never. Spring's still coming. Let it come," she said. "I've already chosen." He was quiet so long she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, soft as snowfall, "So have I." Outside, winter held the mountain in its grip, but inside the cabin, warmth bloomed between two souls who'd thought themselves too damaged for such grace. The pendant at her throat caught what little light filtered through the window, a promise made silver and solid, binding them together against whatever storms might come. The riders appeared on the ridge at dawn, dark silhouettes against the pale sky. Cade saw them first, his body going rigid as he stood at the window. Evelyn, still drowsy from sleep, felt the change in him immediately. "What is it? Get dressed, now!" His voice carried an edge she'd never heard before. "And stay inside." Through the frosted glass, she counted 6 men descending the trail. Even at this distance, she could see rifles glinting in the early light. Cade was already checking his weapons, movements swift and economical. "Who are they?" "Trouble." He loaded his rifle, then his pistol. "Probably heard talk in town about the Boston woman living with the half-breed. They can't just... They can do whatever they want this far from law." He moved to the door, then paused. "There's a cave behind the woodpile. If this goes bad, I'm not hiding while you face them alone. Evelyn. No, we face this together." Before he could argue, hoofbeats sounded in the yard. Cade stepped onto the porch, rifle held casual but ready. Evelyn followed, her chin high despite her racing heart. The lead rider was a grizzled man with cold eyes and a sheriff's star that looked tarnished even in morning light. The others spread out in a half circle, hands resting on weapons. "Red Hawk," the sheriff said. "Heard you got yourself a woman." "My wife," Cade replied evenly. "What's it to you, Morrison?" Morrison spat tobacco juice into the snow. "Had us a town meeting. Folks don't like the idea of a white woman living with Apache trash. Think maybe she's here against her will." "Do I look unwilling?" Evelyn stepped forward. "I'm here by choice." One of the younger men laughed ugly. "Choice? Or has he got you so scared you can't say different? We know what his kind do to white women." Cade's hand tightened on the rifle, but his voice remained steady. "State your business and go. Our business is protecting decent folk." Morrison said, "The lady comes with us. You can accept that easy or hard. I'm not going anywhere," Evelyn said firmly. "This is my home. Ma'am, you don't understand. This man's got blood on his hands. Killed 3 men down in Socorro, who were trying to hang him for being Apache. Evelyn interrupted. I know about Socorro. I know about all of it. Morrison's eyes narrowed. Then you're either stupid or he's got you spelled somehow. Either way, you're coming with us. 2 men dismounted, approaching the porch. Cade shifted the rifle slightly. That's far enough. You gonna shoot lawmen? Breed? I see no lawmen. Just vigilantes on my land. The tension stretched taut as wire. Then one of the younger men made a fatal error. He reached for Evelyn. Cade moved faster than thought, the rifle butt catching the man in the jaw, dropping him cold. Everything exploded into chaos. Men went for guns. Cade shoved Evelyn behind him, firing one-handed while drawing his pistol with the other. A bullet splintered wood inches from her head. Inside, Cade roared. But she grabbed the fallen man's gun instead, surprising everyone, including herself. When another rider charged the porch, she fired, hitting his shoulder and spinning him from his saddle. The firefight was brief but vicious. When the gun smoke cleared, 2 attackers were down, the others retreating to cover behind their horses. Cade bled from a graze on his arm, but his eyes never left the remaining threats. This isn't over. Red Hawk, Morrison shouted. We'll be back with more men. Then you'll need more coffins, Cade replied. They gathered their wounded and fled, leaving dark stains on the pristine snow. Only when they vanished over the ridge did Cade lower his weapons. Let me see your arm, Evelyn said, her hands surprisingly steady. It's nothing. But he let her lead him inside, let her clean and bandage the wound. Her fingers trembled only slightly. You shot a man, he said quietly. He was going to kill you. Most women would have run. I'm not most women. She tied off the bandage with perhaps more force than necessary. And I'm not leaving you to face them alone when they come back. Evelyn, don't. She cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. Don't you dare try to send me away. Not now. Not after everything. He caught her hands. They will come back. With more men. This was just the beginning. Then we'll be ready. We? Did you think I learned to shoot just now by accident? My father taught me when I was young, before the drink took him. I'm not helpless. Cade. Something shifted in his expression, surprise giving way to a fierce pride. No, you're not. They spent the day preparing. Cade showed her where he kept extra ammunition, the best positions for defense, escape routes if needed. She helped him reinforce the shutters and check sight lines from every window. As night fell, she found him standing by the window, keeping watch. They might not come tonight, she said. They will. Morrison's proud. Can't let it stand that we drove them off. How many times have you done this? Defended your home against men who hate you for your blood? Too many. He turned from the window. This is why I wanted you to leave come spring. It never ends. Evelyn, there's always another Morrison, another town that doesn't want my kind. Our kind, she corrected. I chose you. That makes me one of your kind now. He pulled her against him, burying his face in her hair. I should never have let you stay. You couldn't have stopped me. I could have tried harder. She pulled back to look at him. Do you regret it? Us? Never. The word came fierce and immediate. That's what terrifies me. I'd rather die than lose you now. You won't lose me. You can't promise that. Watch me. She kissed him hard, pouring all her determination into it. We survived this night, then the next, then all the ones after. Together. He held her tight, and she felt him shake slightly. This man who'd faced down 6 armed men without flinching. I love you, he whispered against her throat. Should have said it before. Might not get another chance. You will, she said firmly. Because I love you too, and I'm too stubborn to let them take that from us. They made love then with desperate tenderness. Each touch a promise, each kiss a vow. Afterward, they lay entwined, listening to the night sounds outside. Tell me about the silver, she said, touching the pendant at her throat. What does the design mean? It's a protection symbol. The spiral represents life's journey. The points are the 4 directions. My mother said as long as you wear it, you carry home with you. Then I'll never take it off. A sound outside made them both freeze. Cade was up and armed in seconds. Evelyn right behind him. Through the window, they saw torches moving through the trees. Many torches. They brought half the town, Cade said grimly. Morrison, the sheriff's voice carried across the snow. Last chance. Send the woman out and we'll let you leave peaceful like. Evelyn grabbed her rifle. The answer's the same as before. Then you've chosen your fate. The first torch arced through the air toward the cabin. Cade shot it down before it could reach the roof. More followed, and the battle began in earnest. Glass shattered as bullets found windows. Evelyn fired back, her aim true despite her fear. Cade was everywhere at once, defending each point of attack with lethal efficiency. They're trying to flank us, Evelyn called. Spotting movement? He tossed her extra ammunition. Watch the east window. Don't let them get close. The fight raged on. Smoke filled the cabin from gunfire. A torch found its mark on the woodpile, flames beginning to spread. Just when it seemed they'd be overwhelmed, a new sound cut through the chaos. Apache war cries. Riders burst from the forest, attacking Morrison's men from behind. In the firelight, Evelyn saw painted faces, traditional dress mixed with modern weapons. The vigilantes, caught between the cabin and the Apache warriors, scattered in panic. When the last of Morrison's men fled, an elderly Apache man rode up to the porch. He spoke to Cade in their language, gesturing toward Evelyn. Cade's responses were halting, emotional. What's happening? Evelyn asked. This is Joseph Crowfeather. He knew my mother. Cade's voice was thick. He says they've been watching, that they came because I finally have something worth protecting again. The old man switched to English, his words careful but clear. Your woman fought well. She has warrior's heart. He looked at Cade. Your mother would be proud. You choose love over hate. This is good. More words were exchanged in Apache. Then the warriors melted back into the forest as suddenly as they'd appeared. Cade stood staring after them, moisture on his cheeks that wasn't from smoke. They accepted you, Evelyn said softly. After all these years? No. He turned to her, wonder in his eyes. They accepted us, you and me, together. She went to him, and he held her as dawn broke over the mountains. The woodpile still smoldered. The cabin bore new scars, but they were whole. They were together, and they were no longer alone. Morrison will tell everyone we had Apache help, she said. They'll never leave us in peace now. Then maybe it's time to find new mountains, further west, where the Apache still roam free, where we can live without looking over our shoulders. He touched her pendant. Would you go, leave everything behind? Everything I need is right here, she said, meaning it. Where you go, I go. He kissed her then, soft and sweet, full of promise. Around them, the morning light turned the snow to gold, and somewhere in the distance, a hawk cried, wild and free and unafraid. The messenger arrived at midday, his horse lathered with sweat from hard riding. Cade met him with rifle in hand, still wary after the recent attack. The young man raised both hands peacefully. I bring word from Judge Patterson in Dust Creek, he said, producing an official-looking document. Cade Redhawk, you're summoned to appear before the territorial court. Evelyn emerged from the cabin, drying her hands on her apron. On what charges? The messenger glanced at her, then back to Cade. The deaths in Socorro 3 years past. New witnesses have come forward. Morrison's doing. Cade said flatly, I wouldn't know. Sir, I'm just delivering the summons. He held out the paper. You have 1 week to appear, or they'll send marshals. After the messenger left, Evelyn found Cade standing motionless in the yard. Summons crumpled in his fist. We knew this might come, she said quietly. I won't run, not anymore. He turned to her, face set with determination. But I won't have you dragged through this. You could say I forced you, that Morrison was right. Don't!" Her voice cut sharp. "Don't you dare suggest I abandon you now. Evelyn, you don't understand. That judge, those people, they've already decided I'm guilty. Being seen with me, defending me. It'll mark you forever. Then I'll wear that mark proudly." She took his hand. "We go together. Or not at all." The journey to Dust Creek took 2 days. They rode in silence mostly, each lost in thought. On the second night, camped under stars, Cade finally spoke. "Socorro was a mining town. I was passing through, looking for work. 3 men cornered me in an alley. They'd heard about an Apache who'd killed white soldiers. Thought I might be him. Weren't interested in the truth. What happened? They had a rope. Said they'd hang me proper, make an example." His jaw tightened. "I fought. When it was over, they were dead and I was bleeding. Self-defense, clear as day. But the sheriff there said no jury would believe an Apache over dead white men. So you ran. For 3 years. Built that cabin. Kept to myself. Then Hartley owed me money and couldn't pay. Offered the marriage contract instead." He looked at her. "Best debt I ever collected." She moved into his arms. "Whatever happens, we face it together. I could still take you west. Tonight, find those free mountains. No more running. You said it yourself." She kissed him softly. "Besides, I have faith in the truth. Truth doesn't always matter in a courtroom. Then we'll make it matter." Dust Creek hadn't improved in her absence. If anything, it looked more desolate, meaner. People stared as they rode in, at Cade with fear and hatred, at her with something worse, pity mixed with disgust. They took a room at the boarding house, the proprietress reluctantly accepting their money while muttering about decent folks and knowing their place. That night, rocks crashed through their window. Cade swept up the glass without comment. The courthouse was packed the next morning. Morrison sat in the front row, satisfaction written across his weathered face. The prosecutor, a thin man named Aldrich, looked like he'd already written his closing arguments. Judge Patterson, ancient and irritable, banged his gavel. "The Territory versus Cade Redhawk, on 3 counts of murder. How does the accused plead?" "Not guilty," Cade said firmly. "It was self-defense." "So you say." "Prosecutor, call your witnesses." The trial was a farce from the start. Aldrich painted Cade as a savage who'd murdered 3 upstanding citizens in cold blood. His witnesses, all friends of the dead men, told tales that grew more elaborate with each telling. He came at them like a wild animal. One claimed, no warning, no provocation, just Apache bloodlust. When Evelyn tried to object to the obvious lies, the judge silenced her. "You'll have your turn, Mrs. Redhawk, if that's even legal, an Apache marriage." "We were married before God," she said clearly. "That's legal enough." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A white woman defending such a union was somehow worse than the alleged murders. On the second day, Cade finally got to testify. He told his story simply, without embellishment. The rope burns on his neck had long faded, but he described them. The knife wound in his side, barely healed when he'd fled. He showed the scar. 3 armed men against 1. He said, "They came to hang me for being Apache. I defended myself. That's all." "And we're to take the word of a half-breed killer?" Aldrich sneered. "You'll take the word of a man telling the truth." Evelyn interjected, rising from her seat. "Mrs. Redhawk, you've not been called." "Then call me." She moved to the witness chair before anyone could stop her. "I want to testify about the character of my husband." The judge looked ready to refuse, but curiosity won. "Very well, but keep it brief." Evelyn looked out at the hostile faces, then began, "You see a man with Apache blood and assume savage. I see a man who saved my life countless times, who took in a desperate stranger and asked nothing in return, who prays in 2 languages because he honors both his parents." "Pretty words," Aldrich interrupted. "But they don't change what happened in Socorro." "No, but these might—" From her satchel, She produced papers that made Cade straighten in surprise. Letters from Socorro. I wrote to the priest there, Father Miguel. He remembers that night. The courtroom buzzed as she read. The 3 men who died were known troublemakers, often drunk, with a history of violence against Indians and Mexicans. I saw young Mr. Red Hawk's injuries myself when he sought sanctuary. They were consistent with defending against hanging. Inadmissible, Aldrich protested. This priest isn't here to verify. Then let's hear from someone who is... Evelyn's voice rang clear. Joseph Crowfeather of the Apache Nation witnessed you, Mr. Morrison, organizing the attack on our home. Would you like to explain that to the court? Morrison shot to his feet. I was protecting a white woman from the man she chose to marry? The man she stood beside while fighting off your vigilantes? Evelyn faced the crowd. Yes, I fought, shot a man to protect my husband, and I'd do it again, because that's what you do for family. Oh, Your Honor. Aldrich tried desperately. This woman is clearly under some influence. A new voice cut through the chaos. Perhaps I can shed some light. Everyone turned to see a well-dressed man enter the courtroom. He was older, distinguished, with the bearing of someone used to authority. James Holloway, attorney at law from Denver. He approached the bench. I've been investigating the Socorro incident for the territorial governor. What I found might interest this court. Judge Patterson looked trapped. This is highly irregular. So is trying a man for murder when the real killer sits in your courtroom. Holloway turned to face Morrison. Isn't that right, Sheriff? You were in Socorro 3 years ago. Your brother was one of the dead men. The blood drained from Morrison's face. That's a lie. I have hotel records, witness statements. You left town the day after the deaths. Never mentioned your brother or sought justice, because you knew he died attempting murder. Holloway addressed the court. The 3 men had been bragging in saloons about stringing up an Apache. Multiple witnesses confirmed this. Your Honor, Morrison started, but Holloway continued. Furthermore, Sheriff Morrison has been taking bribes from local ranchers to drive out anyone with Indian blood. I have sworn statements, financial records. His attack on the Red Hawk homestead was part of this pattern. The courtroom erupted. Morrison tried to flee but was blocked by spectators suddenly eager to distance themselves from him. Through it all, Cade sat perfectly still, as if afraid to believe the tide had turned. Judge Patterson banged his gavel repeatedly. When order finally returned, he looked older, deflated. In light of new evidence, all charges against Cade Redhawk are dismissed. Sheriff Morrison, you're under arrest. As Morrison was led away in the chains meant for Cade, Holloway approached them. Ma'am, that was quite a defense. Ever consider studying law? Evelyn smiled, gripping Cade's hand. I have other plans. Outside the courthouse, they stood in bright sunlight, both slightly stunned. The crowd dispersed quickly, avoiding their eyes now for different reasons. It's over, Evelyn said wonderingly. This part is... Cade pulled her close. There'll be other Morrisons, other towns. Then we'll face them too, together. He studied her face, this remarkable woman who'd stood before hostile strangers and claimed him proudly. You really would have shot them all for me? Every last one, she confirmed, then smiled. Though I'm glad it didn't come to that. Ammunition is expensive. He laughed, really laughed, for the first time since she'd known him. The sound transformed him, years of weight lifting from his shoulders. Those western mountains are still waiting, he said. New start, new life. What do you say, Mrs. Red Hawk? I say yes. She touched the pendant at her throat, then reached up to trace his scar with gentle fingers. But first, let's go home. We have a cabin to repair and a life to build. They rode out of Dust Creek side by side, backs straight, heads high. Behind them lay judgment and fear. Ahead waited challenges, certainly, but also possibility. And in between, in this moment, they had each other, scarred and strong and finally, truly free. The sun was setting when they heard the horses. Evelyn and Cade had just returned from town with supplies. The cabin repairs nearly complete. She was unpacking flour when he suddenly went still, hand moving to his gun. "What is—" The door exploded inward. Men flooded the cabin, not townspeople this time, but hardened criminals with death in their eyes. Before Cade could draw, a rifle butt caught him in the temple. He dropped hard. "No!" Evelyn lunged for him, but rough hands seized her arms. Well. A gravelly voice made her blood freeze. The Breed's woman. She knew that voice. During the trial, she'd noticed a man watching from the shadows. Scarred face, cold eyes, an aura of violence that made even hardened ranchers step aside. Now he stood in their home, smiling without warmth. "Jake Morrison," she breathed. "The sheriff's brother, the one your husband murdered in Socorro." His smile widened. "Though I reckon Tom had it coming. He was always stupid. Getting himself hanged as a criminal?" He spat on their floor. "Shameful, but killing him? That requires answer." Cade stirred, blood trickling from his hairline. Jake planted a boot on his chest. "Thought about just killing you both." Jake continued conversationally. "But that's too easy. See, you took something from me, family. So I'm going to take something from you." His eyes fixed on Evelyn. "Her. Touch her and I'll—" Jake's boot pressed harder. "You'll what?" "You're going to watch her leave with me. Going to live knowing she's paying for your sins." "That's justice." "I won't go," Evelyn said steadily, though her heart hammered. "Oh, you'll go, or I'll gut him slow while you watch." Jake drew a wicked blade. "Your choice." She looked down at Cade, saw the agony in his eyes. Not physical pain, something far worse. The expression gutted her. "I'll go," she whispered. "No!" Cade struggled, but two men held him down. "Evelyn, don't—" "I have to." She knelt beside him, touching his face. "Live, understand? Whatever happens, live." Jake hauled her up. "Touching. Mount up. Woman." They bound her hands, threw her on a horse. The last thing she saw was Cade fighting to reach her, screaming her name until Jake's men beat him unconscious. They rode through the night. Jake's gang, 5 men total, treated her with casual cruelty, discussing her fate as if she weren't there. "Could fetch good money in Mexico," one suggested. "Or keep her for ourselves," another leered. "She's bait," Jake cut in. "The Breed will follow. When he does, I'll finish what Socorro started." "He won't come," Evelyn lied. "He's smarter than that." Jake laughed. "You defended him in court, fought for him. Think he won't do the same. He'll come, and when he does—" He drew a finger across his throat. They made camp in a box canyon she recognized. Devil's Fork, a dead-end trap with only one way in or out. Jake had chosen his killing ground well. As dawn broke, he positioned his men among the rocks. "He'll be here soon. The Breed knows these mountains." "You're using me as bait to commit murder." "Murder? No, ma'am. Self-defense. Apache went crazy. Attacked us. We had no choice." His smile was vile. "Who's going to contradict us? You'll be too dead to testify." Hours crawled by. Evelyn's bonds cut into her wrists, but she worked at them steadily, keeping her movements small. Jake paced like a caged animal, eager for blood. Then movement at the canyon mouth. A lone rider approaching slowly, hands visible. "Cade, don't!" Evelyn shouted. "It's a trap!" Jake backhanded her casually, splitting her lip. "Let him come." Cade dismounted 50 yards away, his movements careful. "Let her go. Morrison, your quarrel's with me. Actually, it's with both of you. But sure, come closer. Let's discuss terms." Cade took another step. Another. Evelyn saw Jake's men adjusting their positions, preparing to fire. "That's far enough," Jake called. "Drop your weapons." Cade unbuckled his gun belt. "Let it fall. Now release her. You think I'm stupid? Soon as she's clear, you'll—" The Apache war cry split the air like thunder. Riders poured from concealed positions higher up the canyon. Joseph Crowfeather and his warriors, painted for battle. Jake's men, caught completely off guard, scrambled for cover as arrows and bullets rained down. In the chaos, Evelyn finally worked her hands free. She grabbed a rock and swung at the nearest outlaw, dropping him cold. Cade was already moving, flowing like water through the battlefield toward her. Jake realized his trap had become theirs. He grabbed for Evelyn, blade flashing. She twisted away, but not fast enough. The knife caught her side, sending fire through her body. She gasped, stumbling. "Evelyn!" Cade reached them as she fell. Jake turned to face him, blade red with her blood. "Just you and me now. Breed!" They circled each other while the battle raged around them. Jake was bigger, armed, but Cade fought with the fury of a man with everything to lose. When Jake lunged, Cade caught his wrist, and they grappled for the knife. Evelyn pressed her hand to her side, blood seeping between her fingers. Her vision blurred, but she saw Jake gaining leverage, the blade inching toward Cade's throat. With the last of her strength, she grabbed Jake's dropped pistol. "Jake!" He turned at her voice. She fired. The outlaw staggered, looking down at the spreading red on his chest with almost comic surprise. Then he toppled backward, gone. Cade caught Evelyn as she collapsed. No, stay with me." Did I get him?" "You got him." His hands pressed against her wound, desperate to stop the bleeding. "You saved me. Good. That's good." The world faded. She heard voices. Crowfeather ordering his men to help. Cade begging her to hold on. Then darkness claimed her. She woke to firelight and pain. A traditional Apache lodge surrounded her, herbs smoking in the air. An elderly woman tended her wound with gentle hands. "Cade!" Her voice came out as a croak. "Here." He appeared instantly, hollow-eyed and haggard. "Don't move. Maria says the wound is deep but clean. You'll heal, but it'll take time. Jake, dead. His men too, mostly. Crowfeather's people." His voice caught. "They came because of you." Said any woman who'd stand before the white man's court and claim an Apache husband was worth protecting. Smart people. "Don't joke. I almost lost you. But you didn't." She touched his face, feeling the wetness there. "I told you. Too stubborn to leave you." He caught her hand, pressed it to his lips. "When I saw your blood, Evelyn, I can't do this again. Can't lose anyone else I love." "Then don't." She managed a weak smile. "Stop finding trouble. Trouble finds me. Then we'll face it together, like always." Crowfeather entered the lodge, dignified despite his years. He spoke in Apache to Cade, who translated, "He says you have the spirit of she who fights beside. It's a great honor." "What does it mean?" "It's what they called Apache women who rode to war with their men, warriors in their own right." Cade's voice held wonder. "He's offering to perform a ceremony, a true joining, by Apache custom, if you want." Despite the pain, Evelyn felt her heart soar. "Yes, you don't know what you're agreeing to. I'm agreeing to you. To us, the rest is details." That night, too weak to stand, she lay on soft furs while Crowfeather performed the ancient rites. Cade held her hand throughout, speaking vows in Apache and English both. When it was done, the old man placed a beaded band on her wrist, matched to the one he tied on Cade's. "Now you are bound," he said in careful English. "In this world and the next, 2 spirits, 1 path." Outside the lodge, she could hear celebration, Apache and Mexican voices raised in song. Maria had sent word to the nearest settlement, and help had come. Not everyone feared mixed blood or ancient ways. "What happens now?" she asked as Cade lay beside her, careful of her injury. "Now you heal. Then we decide. Crowfeather offered us a place with his band, but you're still caught between worlds. We both are now." She considered this, fingers tracing the beaded pattern of her marriage band. "Then maybe we make our own world. Neither fully white nor Apache, just ours." "The cabin?" "It's a good cabin. You built it strong." She smiled at him. Though maybe we add a room or two. For children. His breath caught. Children? Eventually, when I can stand without bleeding. She grew serious. They'll face hardships, mixed blood in this world. They'll be strong, like their mother. And wise, like their father. I'm not wise. Wise men don't get their women nearly killed. Wise men love with their whole hearts. She corrected. Even when it terrifies them. He kissed her then, gentle as butterfly wings. When he pulled back, his eyes held peace she'd never seen before. No more running, he said. No more hiding. We build our life and defend it, together. Together, she agreed. Outside, snow began to fall, but the lodge was warm, filled with love and promise of tomorrow. Her side ached, would leave another scar to match his, but she was alive. He was hers, and they were finally, truly home. Not in a place, but in each other, where they'd always belonged. The snow fell soft as feathers outside the cabin window, but inside, warmth radiated from more than just the crackling fire. Evelyn sat in the rocking chair Cade had made for her, one hand resting on her rounded belly, the other holding a letter that had arrived with a supply wagon from town. "What does he want now?" Cade asked, not looking up from the leather he was working. He'd taken to crafting again, belts, bags, beautiful things that traders bought eagerly. "Thomas," she said, naming her former Boston suitor. "He's remarried, apparently. Wanted to ensure I was well and offer his Christian forgiveness for my choices." Cade snorted. Generous of him. Indeed. She crumpled the letter and tossed it into the fire, watching the pompous words curl into ash. "He mentions he heard about the trial, about my degradation. Says he prays for my soul. And what does your soul say to that?" She smiled, feeling the baby shift within her. That it's never been better tended. A year had passed since her injury. Since their Apache wedding, the scar on her side had faded to a thin silver line, matching the pendant she still wore. They'd returned to the cabin to find it ransacked but standing. Cade's construction had held together. They'd rebuilt, adding the room she'd mentioned and reinforcing everything for the family they were building. The local Apache still visited occasionally. Joseph Crowfeather had passed in the autumn, but his son Michael continued the friendship. Some townsfolk had come around too, drawn by Cade's fair trades and Evelyn's medical knowledge. Maria had taught her herb craft during her recovery, and she'd become the closest thing to a healer the mountain had. "Sarah's been moving all morning," Evelyn said, using the name they'd chosen if the baby was a girl. "Like she's dancing. Or fighting. Could be Samuel, practicing his warrior moves. Either way, they're strong." She stood carefully, moving to where he worked. Like their father. He set aside the leather, pulling her close, or as close as her belly allowed. "How are you feeling?" Truth now. Tired, sore, happy. She touched his face, tracing the scar she knew better than her own features. "Scared sometimes." "Of what?" "The world we're bringing this child into. What they'll face. They'll face it with parents who love them, with skills from both worlds, with strength earned, not given." He placed his hand over hers on her belly, "and with stubbornness from their mother that could move mountains." She laughed. "Don't forget their father's suspicious nature and tendency towards solitude. Hopefully balanced by their mother's faith in people and terrible judgment in husbands." "Terrible judgment. I'll have you know I chose very well. You chose a scarred half-breed living alone in the mountains. I chose a man who sees silver in broken things and makes them beautiful again." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, until the baby kicked hard enough to make them both laugh. A knock interrupted them, unusual, as most visitors called out first. Cade reached for his rifle, old habits dying hard, but Evelyn recognized the tentative pattern. "It's Mrs. Palmer," she said. "From town. She's been before." Indeed, the banker's wife stood on their porch, bundled against the cold and carrying a basket. Her first visit months ago had been all curiosity and poorly hidden distaste. But she'd come back, drawn by Evelyn's remedies for her headaches, and slowly something like friendship had grown. "I hope I'm not intruding, Mrs." Palmer said, eyeing Cade's rifle. "Not at all. Come in from the cold." Evelyn ushered her inside. "Tea?" As the women settled by the fire, Cade excused himself to check the horses. "Mrs." Palmer watched him go, then turned to Evelyn. "I've brought some things for the baby, and—" She hesitated. "And a warning." "Warning?" "There's talk in town. New preacher arrived last month, very firm in his views about mixing of races. He's been stirring people up." Evelyn's hand went protective to her belly. "We've faced that before. This is different. He's organized, has backing from somewhere. Says he's going to cleanse the territory." "Mrs." Palmer leaned forward. "My husband heard them planning to come up here, not like Morrison's mob, proper-like, with papers claiming the baby should be removed for its own good." "Removed?" Evelyn's voice came out sharp. "Placed with a proper Christian family. It's been done before, with Indian children, over my dead body. That's what I'm afraid of." "Mrs." Palmer gripped her hand. "You should know my husband and I. We don't hold with such views. What you and Mr. Redhawk have, well, it's love. Plain as day. But love doesn't always win against hate with law behind it." After Mrs. Palmer left, Evelyn found Cade in the barn. He took one look at her face and knew. "How long do we have?" She didn't know. Soon, maybe. He was quiet for a long moment, then began saddling the horses. "We leave tonight. Cade, I won't let them take our child." "Neither will I. But running now, with me so close to my time?" Then what? She thought of their hard-won peace, their carefully built life, of the herbs drying in the rafters, the baby clothes she'd sewn, the cradle Cade had carved with such tender care. "We prepare," she said finally. "And this time, we don't face them alone." Over the next days, word spread through channels she hadn't known existed. The mountain telegraph of hunters and traders, Apache and Mexican, all the marginalized peoples who'd found in the Redhawks proof that different worlds could meet in love rather than violence. When the preacher's delegation arrived, they found not an isolated cabin but a community. Michael Crow Feather was there with his warriors. Mexican traders who'd been fair dealt, even some townspeople, Mrs. Palmer and her husband, the doctor who'd been impressed by Evelyn's herb knowledge, families who'd been helped through harsh winters. The preacher, a thin man with cold eyes named Reverend Blackwood, surveyed the assembled crowd with disgust. "You'd all defend this abomination?" "We defend a family," Michael said calmly. "Good people who help their neighbors. Miscegenation is against God's law." "Funny." Evelyn stepped forward, one hand on her belly, the other holding her mother's Bible. "I've read this book cover to cover. It says, 'Love thy neighbor,' not 'love thy neighbor unless they're different.' You dare quote scripture while carrying that mongrel child." The silence that followed was dangerous. Cade's hand had moved to his gun, and he wasn't alone. But Evelyn raised her hand, and amazingly, everyone stilled. "This child," she said clearly, "will be born of love, raised with knowledge of two cultures, taught strength and compassion, pride and humility. If that threatens you, Reverend, perhaps you should examine your own faith. The law says nothing about taking children from married couples. We were wed by Apache custom and territorial statute both. Any attempt to take our child would be kidnapping." The banker, Mr. Palmer, stepped forward. "She's right. I've checked the statutes myself. You have no legal grounds here. Reverend." Blackwood's face purpled. "This isn't over. Good Christian folk won't stand for good Christian folk, Mrs." Palmer interrupted. "Stand for love, family, and minding their own business. I suggest you try it." Faced with unified opposition, Blackwood and his followers retreated. But Evelyn knew they'd be back, in some form. Hate always found new faces. That night, as their unexpected allies made camp in the clearing, She and Cade sat by the fire. Her back ached fiercely. She'd been having pains all day, but hadn't wanted to show weakness before their enemies. "You were magnificent," Cade said softly, a warrior with words instead of weapons. "I had good teachers." She shifted, gasping as a stronger pain hit. "Cade, I think it's time." His eyes widened. "Now? But babies don't wait for convenient moments." Another pain. Stronger. "Get Maria. She promised to help when— Oh!" Her water broke, soaking her skirts. Cade was up and running before she could say more. Within minutes, the cabin filled with women. Maria, Mrs. Palmer, Apache and Mexican wives who'd come to help defend them. They ushered Cade out, though he paced the porch like a caged cat. The labor was long, hard. Dawn was breaking when the baby's cries finally filled the air. Maria placed the squalling infant in Evelyn's arms. "A son," she announced. Strong like father, stubborn like mother. Evelyn gazed down at the tiny face, Cade's dark eyes, her determined chin, skin that held the beauty of both bloodlines. Samuel Joseph Redhawk. When Cade was finally allowed in, he approached like a man in a dream. She placed their son in his arms, watched the wonder and terror and love chase across his scarred face. "He's perfect," he whispered. "He's ours." Outside, they could hear celebration beginning, drums and guitars, voices raised in Apache and Spanish and English. A new life born into a community that hadn't existed until love created it. "No more running," Cade said, echoing his old promise. "We stand and fight. For him. For all of us." Evelyn agreed. "For the world we're building." As the sun rose over the mountains, painting the snow gold and pink, she nursed their son while Cade held them both. The pendant at her throat caught the light, silver bright with promise. They'd traveled far from that dusty train platform where a desperate woman met a scarred man. Through fear and prejudice, violence and pain, they'd found something worth every struggle. A love that bridged worlds. A family that defied convention. A home built on understanding rather than blood. The road ahead would hold challenges. Reverend Blackwood and his ilk wouldn't give up easily. Samuel would face those who saw his mixed heritage as something to be scorned rather than celebrated. But he'd face it with parents who'd already proven that love was stronger than hate, that two broken people could create something whole and beautiful. "Welcome to the world, little warrior," Cade murmured to his son. "May you find it better than we did, and leave it better still." Evelyn smiled, leaning against her husband as their son fed contentedly. Outside, snow continued to fall, blessing their mountain sanctuary. But inside was warmth and love and hope, everything that mattered, everything they'd fought for, everything they'd won. The mail-order bride had wanted a gentleman. Instead, she'd found something far more precious. A partner, a protector, a man who saw her strength and matched it with his own. And together, they'd built a life that no amount of prejudice could destroy. In the end, love had been enough, more than enough. It had been everything. Thank you all for listening to this tale of love against all odds in the Wild West. If you're enjoying these stories around our digital campfire, I'd love to hear where you're listening from. Leave a comment below and let's connect across the miles, just like Evelyn and Cade connected across their different worlds. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Campfire for more stories of courage, romance, and adventure in the American frontier. What did you think of Evelyn and Cade's journey? Share your thoughts below. I read every comment and love hearing how these tales of the Old West touch your hearts. Until next time, partners, keep that campfire burning bright.